Welcome to Eli's Natural Eating Classes, brought to you by Legacy Acres Farm and CSA. We now tune in to hear Eli.
So this isn't, I'm putting sugar I'm eating Cheerios and I'm putting sugar on it the way I used to do it when I was younger. My mom would make me eat Cheerios and then let me sprinkle sugar on it. We're not talking that kind of thing. We're talking our soda pops. We're talking our processed foods. We're talking our bread. Bread has sugar in it. Comes in the form of high fructose corn syrup. We are consuming 22 teaspoons a day without even noticing, without even knowing it. Of course, sugar is a highly refined and highly processed product. Now, for one thing, the sugar we buy at the store is white. Sugar doesn't start out white. It's brown. And because sugar actually has molasses, if you buy it pure, it's actually a cane. It actually looks kind of like rhubarb. And it's a funny process because my mom is down in Georgia and my stepdad actually hauls sugar. That's what he does. He hauls it down there in the southern states. And it's funny because it's such a tough cane. What they do is they burn the fields to harvest it. A really weird process. But what they do is they take in it and they refine it and refine it and refine it. And one of the things they do is they pull the molasses out of it. Then they refine it down and they refine it down. And what you have is as one movie I watched earlier today says, you have a highly refined pharmaceutical chemical. Because we have changed it and 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 we've made it into what we want it to be. It's not the way it was intended in nature. It's not what we want it to be. And here's one of the funny things. In fact, a few minutes ago we were talking about dieting. All of us are being told low-fat diet. You know, fat is what gives us this nice little round and everything else. So cut your fat, cut your fat, cut your fat. Here's the problem, ladies. Insulin turns sugar into fat cells. That's how it's stored. See, and this is going back. You got to remember, some odd years ago, we were created in the feast or famine mode. Our bodies were created because back even 100 years ago, there wasn't quite as much bounty as what there was now. You know, when you were a farm-living family, you lived high on the hog spring, summer, and fall because fruits and vegetables were coming out your ears. But then during the cold winter months, you had to survive on whatever mom got canned and what got put away in the root cellar. And you had to survive, you know, you killed the hog. Well, you had great meat through till about March. And then come March, now all of a sudden you're having a whole lot of soup beans. Because the only part of that pig that's left is the bones that mom can use to flavor the soup beans. And you know, it's this feast or famine that got so many of our relatives to this country. Because they couldn't put enough food on the ship to feed everybody. But our bodies were made so that we could get ourselves through the lean period of time. And that's part of what insulin does. When you get a huge amount of sugar, your insulin receptors say, whoa, we're in overdrive here. We got to get rid of some of this sugar. We got to bring those levels down. But I've got it. What am I going to do with it? Well, I've shoved some in the liver, it's full. I've shoved some over here, it's full. I've shoved some over here, it's full. I'll turn it into fat. And then by turning it into fat, your body burns fat for energy. And it's actually, as we talked last week, it's actually a longer fat or a longer energy source. It takes the body more time to burn through fat than it does pure sugar. So by turning the sugar into fat, now it's got a good energy source. We can store it. Everything's great. It's like mom putting green beans up for the winter, you know. The problem of it is, ladies, is we live in a society where we got a whole lot of feast and ain't no famine left.
That's true.
I mean, let's face it. When was the last time we had to worry about having ham and soup beans 4 days a week to come the month of March? You know, even those of us who are in farming communities, we can like the Dickens. And, you know, and even food types, which we talk in a few weeks, we talk fruits and vegetables. I mean, we can get anything we want any time of the year. I had a pineapple yesterday for dinner. In the middle of January. Not canned, but an actual pineapple. Cut it up, cleaned it, the whole ball of wax. We're not in the feast or famine. So what's happening is we're taking in these 22 teaspoons a day of sugar, and our bodies are bulking up the fat because it's got to put it somewhere. And we wonder why obesity is on the rise. And the sad thing of it is, sugar is a trip, because it's also the primary cause of inflammation. It's what happens. And just about every single disease, chronic illness that we are dealing with today can be linked back to inflammation. I was watching the show, I was telling the ladies about it, I'm watching a 7-part series. Alzheimer's, they believe, is inflammation of the brain. Arthritis is an inflammation. My husband's Crohn's disease is an inflammation. There are very few diseases that they are not linking to inflammation. And sugar gives the body an inflammatory response.
When my daughter Amy had cancer, they told us right up on oncology that sugar feeds cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But they never put her on a sugar-free diet.
They don't.
Oh.
They know that sugar feeds cancer. They know that sugar feeds all of these gut-related issues that we also have. You know, everybody's being told your gut health is bad, your gut health is bad. Autism and ADHD, they've linked to gut health. The problem of it is sugar feeds the bad bacteria.
Even natural sugar that's in an apple?
No, we're going to get to that part. We're talking about going to the store and buying a 5-pound bag of pretty crystal white sugar.
It's 4 pounds.
4 pounds.
Oh,
see?
boy.
And we're talking about the sugar that we don't know we're eating in our Salisbury steak, in our loaf of bread, in our, well, we know it's in most of your cereals. And, you know, even in, a matter of fact, like I said, the movie I was watching today, croissants, bagels, it's in just about everything. You almost cannot eat a processed diet unless you're eating sugar. Yes, ma'am?
When you're searching for your products, what's a good gram to go by to keep your, as far as you can be in tune with what your label says? Is it like 4 grams and under?
Well, see, that's actually, that's a little where a whole food diet is a little bit different. And good thing you mentioned that, because I almost forgot my present. If you're eating...
How much sugar is got? Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, I'm going to almost tell you no sugar in the product, because I don't believe in buying a product, I don't believe in eating a product that has to put sugar on the label. I don't even believe in eating a product that has to have an ingredient label. That's the difference between whole food, real food, and processed food. Processed food has to have an ingredient label. Whole food does not. An apple doesn't have an ingredient label on it. A piece of pork doesn't have an ingredient label on it. Pasta is one of those funny things. Most people do consider pasta real food, but it does have an ingredient label on it. If I'm buying something that has an ingredient label on it, such as, let's say I'm shortcutting this week, and instead of making my own pasta sauce, I'm buying it. My rule of thumb is, I don't even look at the part of the ingredient label that says, 14 grams of sugar and this much, because that's all pseudoscience. Because one thing, all of that is based on that sad triangle, which we all know is backwards. And it's based on a science. It's not actually based on what my body does. It's based on a mathematical equation. Because they say this much calories burns this much at this speed of a normal person who weighs this much. That's not saying how your body is actually going to react to it. That is just a number I'm going to write on the bulletin board. So if I'm going to buy an item, what I do, if I'm buying an item that has an ingredient label, like I said, like I'm buying a jar of pasta sauce, normally the rule is 5. It shouldn't have any more than 5 ingredients. I will go as far as 10 with one exception. I should be able to tell what each one of those ingredients is. So when I flip over my bottle of pasta sauce, it should say tomato puree, it should say garlic, it should say salt, it may say sugar on it, but it's still a more natural form. And if you're limiting the amount of processed foods that you're eating, you're automatically going to eliminate how much of that 22 teaspoons you're going to eat. Now, the reason I gave everybody the pretty red plates, this is how I portion. I don't do 22 calories a day. I don't do points. I don't even like to do palm of your hand, fist, cup, because my hand's a different size than yours. You know, if I tell Kaylee to eat something the size of her hand, she's going to be eating a whole lot less than I am. And my son, who's only 15, his hand's twice the size of mine. This is how a real food person, actually the real food guidelines, 50% of your plate should be vegetables. Preferably low carb vegetables, low starch vegetables. Okay. Bottom half of the plate is vegetables. The top half of the plate you divide in half. One side is your carb. This is where you put your sweet potato, Nancy. The other side is your protein. So in other words, if you're having your sweet potato, you can have a vegetable too. This is how you divide your plate. Now the other thing too is I picked plates that are deep because you don't want, just because I said quarter here, we're not talking like this, ladies. We're talking leveling of the plate would be a portion size. But that is how, and especially when you're eating whole foods, that is the easiest way to figure out how much of my dinner should be what. You know, and it's easier because like I'm taking a nutrition class right now, and it's like, okay, you should have 2 palms of protein and 2 fistful of this. This is easier. And it's the guideline is 50% of your plate is vegetables, a quarter to a third of your plate is protein, and a quarter to a third of your plate is carbs. Okay, so here's the other big thing about, back to sugar. Here's the other big thing about sugar. And I do state in here it is linked to a lot of the brain disorders that we're dealing with. Alzheimer's, depression, learning disorders, ADHD, autism, all of them. But here's the big one. The brain treats sugar just like it does cocaine, just like it does heroin. Sugar is a drug to the brain. It affects the front part of your brain. I'm not going to get into all the science because that loses me, let alone trying to explain it. But it actually triggers the dopamine effect. It's the same thing a drug does. Gives you that feel. Which is why we all love our chocolate so much.
Is that why they call it a comfort food?
That's why they call it a comfort food, because it brings comfort to your brain. Yep. Now, here's the problem. Here is the problem. People who make our food aren't stupid. They know this already. That is why sugar is in everything we eat. Because the problem of it is, that high only lasts so long. And then what do you got to do?
Eat more.
And you reach a state. You reach a state. It's just like cigarettes. Cigarettes are addictive. One of the things that the cigarette company got nailed for is because they actually added nicotine to the cigarettes. There's already nicotine in, the tobacco. They actually added nicotine to the cigarettes so that it makes our body crave more. So as soon as that nicotine's out of your body wants more. Sugar does the same thing. As soon as that sugar's out of our body, we want more. And just like a drug addict, you ever notice how one of the ways a drug addict gets caught is because of the addiction process. Just like with the drug. Today I can shoot up 2 needlefuls of heroin and I'm good. But by the end of the week, my body's adjusted to that heroin, and now I don't need 2, I need 3. And then the next week, I don't need 3, I need 4. That is how a heroin addict gets caught, because the brain wants more and more and more and more. It's the addictive mindset. Sugar's the same way. Today I'm okay because I had 3 cans of soda and a candy bar. Next week, my body's going to say, well, wait a minute, now we've leveled our sugar content. Yes, don't look at me like that, Anita. I'm using it as an example. We've leveled out our sugar content. So now next week, those 3 sodas and a candy bar aren't enough sugar. So now what do I want? Well, now I want 3 sodas, a candy bar, and a box of cookies. In 2 weeks, the cookies aren't enough, so now I've added a gallon of ice cream to my day. And here's the sad thing, ladies. We all kind of giggle at the idea of it. But have you noticed the level of obesity that we are dealing with in our children? Because a child's brain is still growing. We have a more leveled out brain. Our brains are done growing, they're leveling out. So at some point we have that little voice in the back of our head saying, hello, hello McFly. don't have that.
Plus, they don't do anything.
When we add that to the sedentary lifestyle, yes. Sugar is the drug of the 21st century. It's just the one nobody's noticing yet. We're all worried about the alcohol, the heroin, the cocaine, and those things. And the truth of the matter is we're killing our children with sugar. We're killing our children with the food we put on their trays and put in front of their faces and say, eat. Because mom said so.
You know, I just want to interject something. I was at a basketball game Sunday for my grandson, and somebody had handed him a butterscotch disc, which isn't that big. And his mom seen him do that, and she said, no, no sugar in the middle of the game. And I said, one little butterscotch disc really affects him? She said, yes. You can see a noticeable difference when he eats sugar.
Just see, here's the thing.
That's weird.
Well, let me ask you this. Going back to my original idea. When I smoked, which I did a decade ago, I could smoke half pack of ultralights. The filters were like this. And I was good. Had a friend of mine who used to have to break the filters off, and he would smoke 2 packs a day to my half a pack. And he would break the filter off because he couldn't stand that long filter. Some people's minds are more addictive. It's what they call the addictive mindset. And just like some people can, quote, quote, control their addiction, other people can't. It's the same way as and I'm just using it as an example, you two can go to the bar and Anita's good with having 1 beer and you've had a scotch soda and 4 beers and But that's the difference.
Yeah.
Because 1 beer is enough alcohol to settle her addictive mindset. But it's not enough to settle your addictive mindset. Sugar's the same way. And there are some people that, just like alcohol can affect different people in different ways, sugar's the same way. It's the same reason why you can go to the bar 4 days a week and drink that scotch and soda and a beer and whatever else and never actually become an alcoholic. Anita can drink her 1 beer every day for 5 days, and by the end of the week she's an alkie. Different mindsets. I can't always be the victim here.
I don't mind.
Different mindsets. Sugar is the same way. That is why even in our schools, you have kids who can have the same diet, same amount of sugar, and one of them's putting on 20 pounds a week, and the other one still looks like he's not eating at all.
Or flying off
But
the wall.
isn't that a lot of it metabolism?
Metabolism also plays a part in it. And it all plays a part in how your body breaks it down and how your mind reacts to it. It's the same way as I can't guarantee I could put you both on the same amount of sugar and you end up with Alzheimer's and you don't. These are the games we play. These are the questions science can't answer yet.
There's a lot of it's genetics.
A lot of it's genetics too. There is a quote that goes around, and it's one that I love. Matter of fact, I've heard it on a movie, just about every movie I've watched lately. Genetics load the gun, but it's our lifestyle and environment that pull the trigger.
Pretty good.
Okay, so what do we do?
She'd give up.
No, we don't give up yet. I've been there. Trust me, I've been there.
The chemtrails get us anyhow.
I spend almost every week thinking that because my family is very picky on the. Trust me, you should hear when Jamie and I talk, and she's like, "You don't eat Brussels sprouts?" I said, "Are you kidding me? I couldn't get those things in my house."
Oh, I love this. My favorite vegetable.
Do they like cabbage?
If I boil it, not if I fry it.
Because to me, they're very similar.
They'll eat cabbage. My kids eat 9 vegetables, I believe. Carrots, corn, Shelby will eat peas if I make her. Carrots, corn, peas, green beans, cauliflower, and broccoli, 6. And John can't eat the last 3.
Yeah. What else? You can't eat broccoli?
No, he can only eat green beans, carrots, peas occasionally. Those are the only vegetables he can and will eat. Okay, so let's talk natural sweeteners. Let's talk what we can do. Because I bake a lot. It's actually healthier. Fruit is a natural sweetener. When I eat my apple, my body knows what to do with it. It's got fructose in it. That's what fructose is. It's a fruit sugar. But there again, like when I eat the apple, I'm also eating fiber. My body knows what to do with it. Now, in this, I will say, Just because they're natural, just because the body breaks them down, does not mean you can go hog wild with this. You still have to use it in moderation. I will tell you with fruit, many of us have heard the eat your 5 a day, which is 3 vegetables, 2 fruits. Most people say it's 8 a day, 5 vegetables and 3 fruits. If you're really shooting for it, that's what it should be, is 8 a day.
What is that again?
8 a day, 5 vegetables and 3 fruits.
You know what I'm trying? I bought them, but I haven't tried it yet. You take dates and you grind them up in the
And use
blender.
some date sugar.
And yeah.
Yes, that's a natural sweetener. And keep in mind too, going back to my plate, doesn't all have to be one vegetable. Like I said, when I cook vegetables, I do basically 4 pounds of vegetables a night. I do like 2 peas and 2 broccoli. I'm also feeding 6 people, Anita. And I'm trying to give, remember, you gotta also remember a vegetable serving is 1 cup.
It's 28 pounds a week.
Oh yeah, I buy 20 bags of vegetables a week easily. But, so for my half a plate, and we will talk vegetables in a couple of weeks, I could put both on here, and that would be my 50%. So it doesn't always have to be one thing. If you include a salad, that counts as part of your 50%. Okay, raw unprocessed honey. Honey is my go-to sweetener. That is what we use. Now, honey is also very medicinal, but here's your thing. Here's 2 things. Number 1, you want it raw. You want it unfiltered. Number 2, you want it unprocessed. Basically, what you want when it comes to honey is they should be scraping it off that hive, sticking it in a jar, and putting a label on it. The problem of it is most of your honey is not unprocessed. It's processed, and what they do is they heat it to a very high temperature, and it kills everything in it, and it actually has the ability to start crystallizing the honey, which makes it actually a harder sugar. Yeah, because here's the thing. You heat honey over 120 degrees, you've turned it into candy. You've killed all the good stuff in it. And most of your processing is going to reach a minimum of 160, because they boil it.
Isn't that the same way with the pasteurization process on your dairy and all
When we
that?
talk dairy, yeah, we're going to talk that way too, but yeah. Another one is maple syrup. Pure maple syrup, ladies, is a natural sweetener. We're talking the stuff Anita makes. We're not talking,
$3 a thing.
yeah, it's not cheap, but we're not talking about, yeah. We're not talking about log cabin maple syrup product.
Maple flavored sugar.
Which is basically what it is. It's sugar. Aunt Jemima is basically sugar syrup that they've colored brown. So we are talking real maple syrup. Molasses is another one that you can use as a sweetener. Now here's the thing about molasses. The best molasses to buy is blackstrap molasses. That is the most unrefined, unprocessed. It has the most nutrients, vitamins, etc. It is not a good sweetener because it's not sweet at all.
It tastes rough.
Now I have a big bottle of it because I use it to make my barbecue sauce, but I also put honey in it. The other thing is, if you're going to use a sugar, make it an unrefined sugar. Sugar goes through a process. The least refined sugar is called succinate. It is the most unrefined. So that's basically where they've taken it, they've burned it down, they've processed it into the crystal, but they haven't taken any molasses, they haven't stripped anything out of it. Yes. Turbidou is the next one down. Turbidou you can get at Walmart. It is what they call sugar in the raw. It is slightly processed. In other words, they've started to pull some stuff out, but they haven't pulled the molasses out yet, for one thing.
That's
Coconut sugar.
never seen
It's actually, yes, don't ask me what the process they do, but they actually now make sugar out of coconut.
And that's good for you?
It's on the unrefined sugar list.
that.
Now, here's the thing. Notice I put unrefined sugar at the bottom because it still is a sugar. I use my unrefined sugar, my succinate, least of all because it's still a sugar, which means when I put it in my body is still going to do the same thing, not to the degree of the white crystallized sugar, but it's still going to turn it into fat and do all those things. And it's still going to take it longer to break it down because it's not a natural form. In order for me to get crystallized white sugar in natural form, I'd actually have to figure out a way to eat sugar cane, and that's not possible. Because what I do normally is we cook with honey. When I bake, and I bake all the time, I use honey as my sugar.
Do you know?
Yes, I do. And the nice thing about honey, and this is true about all sugars, you only need half what the item says. Honey, you automatically want to cut it in half. So if your item calls for half cup of sugar, you only want to use a quarter cup of sugar or a quarter cup of honey. But I do that with all my sugars. I cut it in half because the body doesn't need that amount of sweetness. The first couple times you may notice, but as you do more of a real food diet and your body adjusts to not everything being laden in sugar, you're not going to notice it. My kids never notice that I cut the sugar in half. I never get them saying, Mom, there's something wrong with this.
So do you make cakes and stuff
Yes.
with your honey?
Yes.
And it turns out.
It turns out just fine. You can use, as a matter of fact. So on to the big one. Wheat. It's another refined and highly processed item that it's at the top of everybody's hit list right now because, like I said, gluten, not to go gluten, depending who you ask or depending on what answer you get. I am going to give you, it's probably going to be the strangest answer you're going to get because I kind of agree with both of them. Okay, first of all, let's talk about wheat and what they do to it. See, the problem of it is wheat was actually really healthy at one point. It was great for us. The problem of it is a couple things happened. First of all, wheat became a commodity. We all want our wheat. They started baking with it, they started refining it, they started doing all these things to it. So the first thing they did is, this is why I said wheat is one of those ones that I kind of question. It's not what we consider a GMO now, but 50 years ago we might have, because what they've done is they have altered the wheat, but they do it by like crossing two different kinds of wheat together and those kinds of ways. What they've ended up with is what is a dwarf wheat. Used to be way back when wheat was taller than I am. I've seen pictures of if you've ever seen a picture of elkhorn wheat, which is the only wheat product out there right now that has not been altered. It's taller than I am.
Have you ever seen it?
Is
I
it,
corn.
I know.
E-I-K, E-I-K.
Yes. Yes.
Eichhorn.
Eichhorn.
E-I-N?
Yes, it is.
Eichhorn, yes.
Yes, it is
Einkorn.
actually what is considered ancient wheat. It has not been altered. But what we have now is we have what they consider a dwarf variety. What they did is they brought it down and got it to produce more berries. So you get more wheat per stalk than we did. Now the other problem of it is some years ago, people who were processing our food realized we have two problems with wheat. First of all, wheat in whole form does not have a long shelf life at all. It turns rancid within days. So if you buy real wheat products, ladies, keep it in your fridge. The other problem,
in the freezer?
freezer, yes, keep it cold. Keeping it cold will keep it from breaking down. Yes, ma'am.
If you buy real wheat berries dried at the Mennonite store in a bag,
You're okay until you turn it into flour.
okay. So
Until you
you're
break
saying
it.
once you break it down, okay.
Right.
But
I
you
certainly
shouldn't put it in your flour mill to make flour
Until you're ready. Right
to
on.
use it.
Right.
Because within 24 to 48 hours, I know I gave my mill to her.
Unless you put it in the fridge. I do know people who they mill all of their flour for the week, like on Sunday, and they put it in the fridge so that they have a week. That's one of the things, like people that have full-time jobs and everything, that's one of the shortcuts you do. If you're going to mill it yourself, you can mill it all at the beginning of the week. Say you know you're going to use 5 pounds of flour this week. So you mill all 5 pounds today, and then you keep it cold, either in the freezer or the fridge, and that's how you keep it from going rancid for your week. Otherwise, yes, you have to use it within 24 hours.
Fran just asked me if I want to buy wheat berries. I think right now on my counter are wheat berries and they're soaking in water because I'm going to sprout mine and make them sprout.
We're going to talk about that. We're getting there. We're getting there. Trust me.
Is sprouted bread better than Ezekiel?
We're getting there. We're getting there, ladies. You guys are jumping ahead of me here.
I'm going grocery shopping tomorrow.
I know, and we're going to talk about all of it as long as I can get through it in the next hour. That's why I'm trying to stay on track, because I do have a lot to cover. Okay, so the first problem they have was wheat turned rancid. It doesn't have a long shelf life. The other problem that we have, and this is where it really started, is wheat is hard to digest. It has what they call phytic acid, and the body doesn't break it down. History of it is this very simple thing. Everything is made to protect itself. You know, an animal has claws and teeth and all of those other things that protect itself. One of the things that the wheat berry has is it has a hard outer shell that won't break down very well, which is also part of the reason why we can get wheat all over the country, because an animal eats it and it goes through the body solid and comes out, and there you have a wheat berry. Now you have wheat growing in the middle of your yard.
They're like corn.
Right. But here's the thing.
Remember, I'm from the city.
Yes, ma'am. So everybody realized, and wheat was actually causing constipation issues, it was causing digestive issues, it was causing all of these problems, and it still will. So our wonderful world, the way it is, we hit the wonderful Industrial Revolution, and the milling process started getting better and better and better and better. And what ends up happening is a wheat germ has 3 parts, a wheat berry has 3 parts. It has the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. Milling automatically breaks your bran. The outer core of it is automatically broke. Problem of it was they didn't used to be able to break the germ. And the germ is where most of your important vitamins and nutrients are.
Well, that's just what I was going to ask you. What about wheat germ and oat bran together?
Well, that's a digestive problem. It can be.
Okay.
But they couldn't break the germ, which is where all your vitamins are. That's why so many people eat wheat germ, because that is where your vitamins are. It's got your B vitamins, it's got your protein, it's got your folic acid.
So you should put that in your shakes.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Eventually, the Industrial Revolution caught up with us, and they created a milling process that lets them break down everything but the endosperm. And the endosperm is empty. There's nothing in it but starch and protein. And that, ladies, is what we're eating when we go buy a bag of white flour. You're eating nothing but the endosperm. There's nothing in it. When we go buy our wonderful bags of all-purpose flour, all you're getting is the very center of the wheat berry, which is nothing but starch and protein. It's basically what the rest of the berry is meant to eat.
So what kind of flour do you recommend?
We'll get there. Hold on. Okay. Now, the other thing, and we will get there because I am making the recommendation. So this was the problem. Civilization's solution to it was we'll just get rid of all that outer stuff and we'll make the endosperm. And not to mention that, but does anybody ever price the difference between whole wheat flour and all-purpose flour? I can go buy a 10-pound bag of all-purpose flour for about $2. And there again, because we got rid of all the good stuff, we made it cheap. And now everything can use it because it's cheap to make. Then, like I said, the problem with it is there are some problems to eat whole wheat berries. There are some problems. For one thing, it binds minerals. It acts like a vacuum. When it gets in your stomach, any minerals that are floating around in your stomach, it goes, and now the rest of your body can't have them. So there were reasons for civilization to say we have a problem with wheat, because it was causing health issues.
But it's in the Bible.
It is in the Bible. But you have to remember what I talked about a few minutes ago, Nancy. We changed what was in the Bible from what we're eating now. And that's one of the major problems. The last thing I'm going to say, and this is kind of argumentative, but I'm going to put it out there. There is research right now that says the gluten allergy that we're all dealing with is not actually an allergy to gluten. It's actually the allergy to glyphosate. How do you say that? It's the main item in Roundup. The main chemical in Roundup. Now,
on bread?
well, now here's the thing, and here's why everybody's arguing this. Because wheat is not a GMO. It's not a Roundup ready seed. When GMOs first hit, Roundup was actually the creator of GMOs. What they did is they managed to change the seed to where you could spray your field with Roundup to kill all the other weeds, and it wouldn't kill your corn. It's what they call Roundup Ready seeds, and that was the first form of GMO. Because now Roundup can sell you corn and sell you Roundup to spray your field with it. Now the problem with wheat is this: it is not a GMO. However, they do use Roundup or glyphosate or glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
That's the word.
Glyphosate.
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 That's actually, they use it on the ground before they plant. It is part of the fertilization process. The other thing that makes them, which is bad enough, because they do that with a lot of products. It's not just wheat. Here's where they believe that the wheat allergy is coming in. Because 2 weeks before they harvest wheat, they spray it with this product, the glyphosate, in order to help the wheat dry faster so they can harvest it on time.
Burn down.
It dries it out. So every bit of wheat that we're eating is sprayed with Roundup to dry it out. Yes. That is why they believe, that is part of the reason why they believe this gluten allergy has suddenly come up. As she said, it's in the Bible. I mean, we've been eating wheat our entire lives. But they believe we have a twofold problem. Number one, we've changed the wheat. And number two, we're chemicalizing it. And unfortunately, what I'm about to talk about with you guys, I have a way to break down the phytic acid in the wheat, the part that sucks in all the minerals and the part that makes the wheat so your body can't digest it. There's nothing I can teach you to do about the fact that we're spraying that wheat with Roundup. I can't. It is in the food. The only way you can possibly come close is if you can find it in organic form.
So organic flour.
If you can find organic flour, it would not be sprayed with
Is
Roundup.
it hard to find?
Hard, no. Expensive, yes. Okay, so we've broken down our wheat, and now we have that wonderful endosperm that's nothing but sugar. Keep this, which is what we call refined grains. It is what you eat every single time you pick up a flour-made product. Your bread, your croissant, your bagel, your cookies, your cake, your brownies, your cereal, your Little Debbie's. Whatever it is, notice I didn't point to anybody when I said the Little Debbie's. Whatever it is, if you are buying an already made flour product, it is made out of refined white flour. And your body takes white flour in and it translates it the same way it does sugar. Because that's what it is, it's just protein and starch. Starch is sugar. So my body does the exact same thing with the white flour that it does with the sugar. It spikes up my insulin level, which it does. Jacks that insulin level up because my body's turning in that carbohydrate and energy, and now it's got too much. So my insulin level says, well, shoot, now I got to put all this flour on top of all this sugar, because we all know that there's sugar in the cake, and there's sugar in that creamy filling, and there's sugar on the frosting. I got to put all this stuff somewhere. So we'll start packing it into fat cells. White flour is inexpensive. It is shelf stable. It is the reason why we can go to Walmart and buy flour on the shelf. Because all there is the endosperm. And the problem of it is, here's the other problem with it. We are eating so much, even if you don't take into all the health risks of eating white flour and eating white sugar. We are eating so much flour and sugar, we ain't eating anything else. We're going home and we're making spaghetti with pasta and spaghetti sauce, which is loaded in sugar, and we've got our plate, and instead of it looking like this, it looks like this much with spaghetti, and I got a little bit of corn sitting right here in this little corner just to make Mom happy.
Corn and spaghetti.
Oh, I love corn and spaghetti. I love corn and
Okay,
spaghetti.
garlic bread.
Well, no, garlic bread's another, that's what I'm saying is, right, so now we've got the garlic bread, well, let's forget the corn altogether. But there's nothing else.
Oh boy.
I mean, even the yogurt and stuff, if you stop and think about a child's packed lunch, we have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There is sugar and white flour in the bread. There is sugar in the peanut butter. There is sugar in the jelly. Now I've given them a yogurt, which has sugar in it. And I've given them a juice box which has sugar in it. And if they're lucky, I've given them an apple slice, which I can almost guarantee is the one thing out of that list that will end up in the trash when my kids are done eating lunch. Okay, to Teresa's comment. Soaking, sprouting, or sourdoughing. She said she bought wheat berries and she's soaking them. And actually, Teresa, take a picture of that because that is part of your challenge.
I got pictures already.
Good girl.
When I put them in the spring.
Good girl. Okay, when you soak, sprout, or sourdough, those are the three forms. You break down the grain so the body can digest it. Now you've broken that wheat berry so that everything inside, the body can actually break it down. It's not going to go through my body, through my digestive system, and come out and go eat in the middle of my grass. My body is actually going to break it down and do something with it. The other thing of it is the soaking, sprouting, and sourdoughing reduces the phytic acid in the wheat. It cuts it down, as well as some gluten. Does not make the product gluten-free, but it does break it down.
So which is better, Ezekiel bread or sprouted? Which is better, Ezekiel bread or sprouted?
Sprouted.
Okay. That's what Dr.
Because-
Ross says that too.
Because Ezekiel bread is still a grain that the body still has to break down. Sprouted bread, the grain's already broke down. Okay, soaking.
They're marketing Ezekiel bread as a sprouted bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you, yeah. Okay, soaking. Soaking is when you take your flour and you add an acetic medium, usually either a dairy or apple cider vinegar. And I will tell you folks that if you put apple cider vinegar, it does not make your flour taste like apple cider vinegar. You mix them together to where you end up with like a dough ball. And you let that soak for 12 to 24 hours. So you give that liquid 12 to 24 hours to break down the acid medium in the food. And for those of you who are on Jamie's group, Jamie and I will be doing some videos of this in the coming year. That's one of the things we talked about because there is a process.
What's Jamie's group?
Jamie has a Facebook group. The contest that we're doing is running on her Facebook group, so quite a few people have joined it. She's videotaping me. You can see the videos on there as well as the copies of the notes. Come spring, I will be doing demonstrations of how to soak, how to, possibly not sprouting because that takes a little bit, but we have to come up with some
I
ingredients
have
first.
sprouts in various areas. So
And I will be showing you all how to sourdough.
That'd be cool.
So soaking, you have to let it soak for 12 to 24 hours. It breaks down the grain.
You're soaking what?
You're soaking your flour.
Okay, you said flour.
I'm taking my flour and I'm mixing
Which flour? Like where?
Normally, at this
Purchase it in
point,
the store or you made?
we're talking about actual whole wheat flour.
That you've made.
Well, no, I can buy it.
That you've,
No, I buy it.
okay.
I don't soak my own wheat berries yet. I don't have a grain mill. So when I buy flour,
Flour in a bag.
right?
Okay.
When I buy flour, I am
Flour
buying
bag.
whole wheat flour, and I actually.
So what's the ratio?
Hold on. I got two questions going on at the same time. Hold on. There is actually two different kinds of wheat too, folks. There is red wheat berries and white wheat berries. Red wheat is what gives everything the brown color that we're all used to when we think of wheat bread. We always think it's nice and brown. White wheat berries do not. I myself use white wheat berries because my husband is allergic to the red. So I use whole grain white wheat. And that's the other thing you want. You want it to say whole grain. You can get this kind of flour just about anywhere. The Amish store, Planktown sells it. Walmart sells it in, is it Annie? No.
is that Bob Mills?
Yes, Bob Mills. In that section, there's also, it's another group. Yes, it says on it white wheat or wheat, and it'll say whole grain. You can buy it like at Walmart. It's usually down where the specialty flours are, like all the Bob Mills stuff is. At the Amish store, the whole grain wheat is actually in the fridge. Kudos to them. Because that's the only problem with the sitting on the shelf. You are running the risk of it being rancid because it is a whole grain that they have.
It does.
milled.
It does get rancid too. I
Yes.
mean, if you've had it sitting around and you're like, "What's wrong with this?" You don't use it. It's
Yeah,
rancid.
that is the hard part. That is the problem that we're in. But unfortunately, unless you have a grain mill, This is the best I can offer. Because she's right, the best version is to have a grain mill and grain rule it yourself. A lot of us don't have that option, including me. This is the best option. So I go and I buy my whole grain white wheat flour, and I mix it with usually it's about a quarter cup. You want to add enough liquid that you basically get like a dough ball. And it does make mixing the stuff the next day a little more difficult. Here's the one thing though too, make sure you cover it, because otherwise it will dry. And you'll end up with all those little chunks of dry dough. Then the next day, after your 12 to 24 hour soak, that is when you add your baking soda, your baking powder, your whatever else you're making into the product. And it's it does take a little bit more, because you are basically having to work other items into what is almost a dough. When I make mine, I go a little bit heavier in my liquid so that I don't end up with such a hard dough ball.
What kind of liquid are you putting in there?
Usually it's a dairy. I like cream, buttermilk, any of the real fat dairies.
Okay.
Or you can do apple cider vinegar and a combination of water. If you Google soaked bread, you will find recipes that tell you, and it usually will tell you, do these 2 steps, let it soak for 12 to 24 hours, and then you do the last couple steps.
So then you could knead it in your bread machine.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The other way is sprouting. And sprouting is actually what they used to do all the time, way back when. Because what would happen was, they cut everything down and they leave it laying out for a couple of days to dry. And what is happening is it rains on the wheat, and in the drying process it sprouts. How many of you have ever done the wonderful science fair project or science projects in school where you took the bean seed and you put it between 2 wet paper towels until you got a little sprout coming off of it? It's the same thing you're doing with wheat berry. That is what you're doing, because once it breaks and you get the sprout coming out of it, now there again, that membrane is broken, that hard shell is broken, and the sprouting also helps break down the folic acid. Believe it or not, way back when, this was how all of our wheat products were done. This is what they call traditional baking. I will tell you folks that while we're talking about sprouting, I do know that Planktown, the Amish store in Shiloh, does sell sprouted flour.
Sprouted
Flour. In other words, what you're going to mill, it's already done it. There again, though, it's sitting on the shelf, so you're still going to run the risk of it being turned. But for the rest of us who don't have a grinding mill, this is what we deal with. Okay, the last idea is sourdough. And sourdough is the best. Of the 3, sourdough is your best option. And there's 2 reasons for it. Number 1,
So it's better than sprouted.
it's better than sprouted and soaked, and your Ezekiel bread.
Okay.
Sourdoughing actually changes the composition of the flour. The other thing of it is it's a ferment. And we're going to talk ferments a little bit later, but ferments are, okay. How many of you ever bake bread and you put the yeast in and you watch it rise?
Yeah.
Okay, fermenting is the same thing, except I'm catching the yeast in the air. What you do with sourdough is you actually, and we will, like I said, I will be showing videos on this, you actually mix flour and water, is what they call feeding it, and then you continue to put flour and water together until basically what happens is it starts to bubble and it's catching the yeast in the air. And I will tell you that I can take my sourdough, which because I do have a sourdough starter at home, and if I leave it sitting on the table, it'll poof just like yeast bread. I've done it. I forgot about it and left it sitting there. Or well, it depends on your sourdough. Some things that you do what they call long sourdough. You make it the day before and then you let it soak overnight, the same way you do with your soaked dough. Some things you do like my waffle recipe is a quick one. I literally pour the sourdough in with the flour, mix it up, and make waffles within 10 minutes. In the case that it's a long sourdough, normally it's because you want that yeast action. You need that, whatever, like you're making biscuits, you want the poof. You're making bread, you want the poof. Because that's what gives your bread rise and you don't end up with biscuits that look like this. Mm-hmm. So those are the good things about, so if you're talking about flour, the 3 best ways to eat flour, wheat flour, is soaked, sprouted, and sourdough.
Can you Google sourdough bread on the internet?
You can Google it and it will show you videos on actually how to start it, but I will tell you that I do a cheat, and I will let you all in on the cheat. When I am making my starter, I take my plain white yogurt and I pour, instead of using like, I think the very first time I do it, it's like a quarter, because you don't do quite as much water to your flour. So it's like a quarter cup of flour to 3 tablespoons of water. My very first start, I don't use water, I use the whey off of my yogurt because there's already the whey, it's already got the, I don't have to capture the yeast.
I used to throw that out thinking it was
I
bad.
know. That is my guarantee. Then from then on, as I'm feeding it, because when you first start a sourdough starter, you got to feed it every about 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours to keep the process going. And then you're going to end up with this nice, beautiful, bubbly medium. I'll bring my sourdough starter with me next week, and you guys can all see it.
What did you say, a fourth a cup of flour?
Usually it's a fourth a cup of flour to like 3 tablespoons of water, because you don't want to put as much water as you do flour. And like I said, the first time my cheat is I use the whey off of plain white yogurt, the liquid whey. And then from then on, I use flour
In
and
place
water.
of the water? Yeah.
No, I don't. Not the first time.
Oh.
Instead of using 3 tablespoons of water the first time, I use 3 tablespoons of whey.
Yeah.
And then 12 hours later, I will do a quarter cup of flour and start using the water from then on.
Okay.
And I also will cheat sometimes, like I haven't been doing a lot of baking this past week, so my sourdough's been sitting and it wasn't looking quite a little bubbly. So I did throw in a tablespoon of whey in with my water, and I forgot about it. I forgot to feed it. So I did throw a little bit of whey into it. I did 1 tablespoon of whey to 2 tablespoons of water when I fed it to activate it again.
And you wouldn't do all the yogurt, you just are doing...
I just do the whey off the yogurt, just the liquid. When you let yogurt sit, you know how you get that liquid film on the top? I drain that off. And I use that. So that is my cheat, and it does help.
Your homemade yogurt, or do you buy plain
I
yogurt
buy plain yogurt,
at the
yeah.
store?
We're going to
Okay.
talk about that when we do dairy, but that is my cheat.
Okay,
I can make homemade yogurt,
great.
but I don't have the time. Okay, so what happens? We're almost there, ladies, if I can get this thing to flip. Flip, there we go. Other grains. Because we all know that in this world everybody's telling us not to eat gluten. So everybody is compromising using other grains. The 3 biggest ones being corn, oats, and rice. Well, we all know the problem with corn. Number 1, it's a GMO. And when you're talking grain, you're talking field corn. You're not talking the sweet corn that they've raised for us to all have on the 4th of July. The grain, the corn that they use to make corn tortillas and all those things, they use field corn. And it is a GMO product. Now the high side of corn is, I will tell you that corn has a very high level of antioxidants. So if you do eat your corn tortilla, it's a great thing for antioxidants. But here's the problem. In the milling process, they strip corn the same way they do wheat. You're still only getting the endosperm. The hard part of the corn is thrown away with the hard parts of the wheat there. So all the nutrients, a lot of times, all the nutrients and vitamins in the corn you're losing in the milling process if you're buying it already milled.
So is that why cows get fat on corn in the feedlot?
That's
turns
part of
to
it.
fat?
Yeah. And actually that is exactly what they, well, and not to mention that, but the other problem of it is, and we'll talk about this when we talk meat, the other problem of it is cows are not supposed to eat corn
Right.
because they're vegetarians. But they do use corn to fatten them up.
Corn and
No, it's actually a grain. And so their bodies are not made to break it down. They're made to graze, they're grazers. They're only made to eat grasses and
my
things like that.
grandparents came over from Hungary, and they said over there, humans don't eat corn.
No, but you know what? And that's the funny thing. Humans don't eat corn over there, but do you know that most of the countries are not having the gluten deficiency or the gluten allergy problems that we are having here in the U.S., and they eat wheat all the time because their processing is different. They don't spray it with Roundup. Okay, oats. Oats is probably the only grain you're going to find that in the processing of it does not have the outside parts removed. It is the only thing you're going to be able to eat and get all the nutrients and vitamins that you want. Now, the problem of it is because it is in its entirety, you need to soak it. Because otherwise it's going to do to that wheat exactly what the dog does when he actually eats the wheat. oats. If you don't soak your oats, your body can't break them down.
What if you get
Instant oatmeal, microwave popcorn, instant rice is a very highly processed product. They have changed the chemistry of the product so that it'll cook in 3 minutes.
Even the organic one, because I found that at Kroger's, the organic.
Instant oatmeal? Or organic popcorn?
Microwave popcorn.
Okay, I was waiting until next week to talk about this, but I'm going to mention it now. Just because it's organic doesn't make it real. What organic means is that I haven't sprayed it with pesticides.
Doesn't mean you haven't stripped it, you just haven't sprayed it.
I have not treated it with any outside chemicals. That does not mean that I haven't boiled it at extremely high temperatures. I haven't stripped it down so that there's nothing left of it. Because let's face it, ladies, you can go buy organic oatmeal cookies or organic chocolate chip cookies that are still made out of white flour. The only difference of it is my organic chocolate chip cookies just aren't, the wheat hasn't been sprayed. That is the only difference. The phytic acid, the gluten, all of those things we're talking about is still there. Organic does not mean real.
Let's go back to the oatmeal. I have a problem here.
Yeah, I have a bowl.
I'm going to explain, it's actually not as big a problem as everybody thinks.
Steel cut's easy to cook. They're easy to make.
Yeah.
Actually, what you have one of two options, and you guys may actually like this one. If you cook old-fashioned oatmeal, it actually is a soaking process because you cook it in the water and you let it steam. So that usually will break it down. The other one that's really popular is what they call overnight oats. And you put your oh yeah, it's a big one. You actually put your oatmeal. You can Google it. Google recipes for overnight oats. They have all kinds of flavors.
Yeah.
But basically what you do is you put them like in a mason jar, and you put your milk and your oatmeal together.
And your berries.
And your berries and whatever else, your apple cinnamon, whatever you want. You stick it in the fridge, and in the morning it's a grab and go.
You don't cook it then?
No,
You don't have to.
You don't have to. There are people I know who grab and go, and then what they do is they basically pop it into a pan and warm it up, and then they eat it.
Is it
But
good?
my
It
kids,
is.
it's the only
It's
way
good.
my kids will eat oatmeal. Since we mentioned rice, there again, rice is another thing that they removed the bran and the germ. It is also a GMO, ladies.
You know, Copen's converted?
White rice is a GMO product. Miss Anita, your rice milk is a GMO product. That's why I don't recommend rice milk as an alternative milk source. The only two, if you are going to buy rice, now white rice is a GMO product. If you're going to buy rice, you want to buy either whole grain or wild rice. Wild rice.
Oh, wild rice looks like it has bugs in it. I can't eat it.
I'm getting there for your choices. The other two are basmati, Basmati, and jasmine.
Jasmine, yum.
And jasmine rice is at Walmart. They also sell it at the bulk store. At Planktown. Jasmine rice, and actually they even sell jasmine rice at Sam's Club, right in big 25-pound bags.
It's good. Yeah. It's real good.
Jasmine rice cooks up for me the same way as white rice. When I switched rice, nobody even knew I did anything. Okay, so what kind of grain should you eat? 100% whole grain. Whole grain wheat, whole grain white. If you are going to eat your whole wheats, I'm going to recommend that they are soaked, sprouted, or sourdough'd because of what I've already said. Otherwise, your body's not breaking them down properly. If you have the ability to grow berries and grind them, by all means, please do. If you cannot soak, sprout, and sourdough, then what do? My two best recommendations are actually not the gluten-free flours. The gluten-free flours are usually the corn flour or rice flour. If you go and you buy gluten-free all-purpose flour, it's either corn flour or rice flour.
What about all these flours that are like coconut flour?
That's what I actually recommend. My
Oh,
two
some my
recommendations.
freezer. I have some in my freezer.
My best recommendations, if you cannot soak, sprout, and sourdough, is almond flour and coconut flour. And actually, both of those are actually a higher form of protein. Almond flour is a great protein. It's an awesome form of protein because almonds are protein, and so is coconut. So those are my two best recommendations. And I will tell you, ladies, my husband has, as we mentioned, my husband has Crohn's. He cannot have coconut flour because it doesn't break down well. So almost everything I have to make, I use almond flour, with the exception of I was finally able to introduce pasta back into my husband's world because I sourdough. And sourdough does not make him bloat because it's already broke down. And because it's got all that wonderful growing yeast and everything, he can eat sourdough to his heart's content.
So you make all your own pasta noodles?
I make my own pasta noodles.
You're used to them.
She called me very funny. I've had that place
Live in the kitchen.
No, honey, I don't. Actually, believe it or not, and I quit making noodles for a while because of the time. One of the things that I learned to do is I make what they call fresh noodles. I don't dry them. So
Right.
what I do is I make, and noodles are one of those things you have to long ferment. So the night before, when I'm making his lunch and we're doing all that other fun stuff before I get ready to bed, I make my dough. Which my sourdough is actually easy. I make a double recipe. My regular recipe is 1 cup of starter to 3 cups of flour
Why don't you
to...
bring us that recipe next week?
I can. Yeah, it's 1 cup of flour,
Bring
1 cup of
some, too.
starter.
Remember
I'll
our
bring a
last
starter.
class when you brought us
Bring
all
some
kinds
bread,
of little
yeah.
I'm going to bring my starter next week. I will bring my starter next week, and if I will figure out a way to make some noodles this week so you guys can all check out my sourdough noodles. But it's 3 cups of flour and 3 eggs, and 1 cup of sourdough starter. Anyways, I make it the night before, and then I cover it, and I let it soak and ferment to the next day. Then the process is simple. I take it out, I put flour on my table, I roll it out so that it's all nice and about that 1/4 inch thickness. And then I take, my husband, John usually does it like this. He takes it, we have those wonderful pizza cutters, and we cut it into strips, and he cuts it this way into strips, and then I drop it into boiling water. And it does not take as long to cook fresh pasta as it does to cook dried pasta. So by the time, even with him cutting it and having to go through that process, it doesn't take me any longer to make my fresh pasta than it would if I was boiling and cooking dry pasta.
So could you take that and hang it on those funny little
I have
racks
those, yes,
and
I
then
can.
pack it up?
Yes, I can.
How long will that last if you do, like, say you want it for the next day? Can you put it in the fridge?
Mhm.
Okay.
I can also dry. I actually have drying racks where I could cut it. And actually, once you roll it thin, I would cut it into sections and hang it and dry it. I used to do that, and then you cut it into your pieces. But I realized that I could cut my time down if I didn't dry it. However, you can dry it, and if you dry it, cut it into your pieces and dry it, then you can actually store it in your pantry. Or you can not dry it and store it in your fridge. And I've done it up to a week.
And can you make other things like gnocchi and other different types of shapes? And stuff?
Mm-hmm. Milky is actually the one they make out of potatoes.
But different, shapes.
You
Something
could,
that's
yes.
not a noodle, like long.
You
Yeah.
can make spaghetti. I actually have a pasta cutter, and yeah, you can make spaghetti noodles out of it. You can make linguine out of it. John, I mean, we've talked about getting the little bitty cookie cutters and letting the kids have fun. Yep. So yeah, you can do that with anything. And then the other nice thing too is when I sourdough, like I said, we do waffles and pancakes. Waffles and pancakes, I usually make them the morning of, and it's a quick one. Biscuits I do the morning of, although you'll end up with skinnier biscuits if you don't let them soak. So anything that you want to have poof, you need to do the night before. You let it soak overnight all day, and then you proceed like you normally would. I actually I do quick form, and I add it to my cookies, because as long as I put my sourdough starter in it, John can eat it. So I make sourdough cookies, make sourdough pancakes, and you'll end up with, like in the pancake, I always end up with the little air bubbles from the sourdough. It will change your flavor some.
I was going to ask you that.
It does change your flavor. Now, I actually, for mine, this is, I actually use unbleached all-purpose for my sourdough because it's got a lighter flavor to it, and because of the fact that I'm dealing with my husband. If I was not dealing with John, then I would still do the whole grain white, but even that's fermented sometimes still bothered him. So I do use I use unbleached all-purpose flour, or I mix them depending on my mood. But there again, like I said, I'm not recommending those things to you guys because I'm dealing with an autoimmune disease. that until I figured out he could eat sourdough, we had to go completely pasta free. We were completely wheat free until about a month and a half ago. When I did this last class, we were completely gluten free because he couldn't handle gluten. If I'm making bread, if I'm doing something like making chicken tenders, I use almond flour. If I'm not doing something that I can do a sourdough, then I use almond flour. And that is truly is my recommendation. Okay, now, keep in mind this, ladies. I'm at the end of the food chain. I'm not expecting all of this from all of you. What I am saying is, just like I said last week, start with something. That is my request. Last week I told you guys if there was one thing that I wanted was you guys to get rid of your yellow oil. Your yellow oil and or your yellow margarine, preferably both, by picking one of those others. My request today, my challenge for you today is get rid of your white product. Whether it be white flour, all-purpose white flour, or whether it be white sugar. Preferably you will get rid of both, but I'm challenging you guys to do one. So,
Now, is that in your bulk item or is that in your food packaged food item? Like food
in your bulk items. In your bulk items. In your bulk items. I'm hoping that eventually the more, and see, I'm not asking you guys to get rid of your processed food, because remember when I told you in the beginning of this, I'm not going to say take away, because it's the same reason why diets don't work. If I tell you take away your product, that's all you hear in your head. It's like when you go on a diet. You don't think about the fact that you can have 15 points. You think about the 35 you can't have. I'm saying the same thing. As we switch up the ingredients, and as you start to feel better, the processed foods will go away. The more good stuff you bring in, the less room you have for the bad stuff. And believe it or not, that is the way that works. That's why, like I said, I'm not asking any of you to change your diet. If you are all pasta-loving people, which my husband is a big pasta-loving person, I'm not asking you to give up pasta. You may, as if you continue this journey, as long as people like Jamie and Anita and I have been, you may change some of the ways you eat. But that's not where you start. Where you start is your ingredients. Where you start is what you cook with. So cook the same way you do, but you change your ingredients. You cook spaghetti, but you buy whole grain pasta instead of pure white pasta. Or you make your spaghetti sauce instead of the jar of spaghetti sauce. Or you flip that jar of spaghetti sauce over and you pick a jar that you can read everything on the label. That is how you make these changes.
So if you make your own spaghetti sauce and you use Mrs. Wages, you know those bags and stuff? Are those okay? You have to read the label.
You'd have to check the label because I'm not sure. I haven't used those. I don't do
I
it.
have until next August to worry about it.
There you go. So, here is my challenge for the week. Like I said, one or both. I pray that at some point you get to both. But I would like to see the elimination of one white product this week. Either your sugar, and you switch it out for the natural sweeteners. Go buy a thing of honey. Go buy a thing of maple syrup. Like I said, I'm suggesting honey.
Stuff. Maybe I'll bring some in if it actually tastes good.
I'm suggesting honey over maple syrup because maple syrup is sweeter. But switch out your sugar, your bag of sugar. There are people I know who use honey in their coffee.
Yeah, I do. Honey crystals.
And switch out your flour product. Even if, and here is the simple step, even if you say, I am not ready for whole grains, then go buy unbleached all-purpose flour. Because that's still coming a step down on the food chain. Because that is the other thing they do too, is they bleach it. That's why it's all pretty white. If you buy unbleached all-purpose flour, if you want to switch to wheat flour or red flour, red or white, I will tell you there is a difference in the taste. My recommendation is don't go 100%. especially if you have family, because they might notice. The way I did it is I actually would do 50-50 unbleached and whole grain white. But start that way. If the recipe calls for, and actually my cookie recipe even says it this way, if the recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, today I'm going to make it, and I'm going to make 1.5 cups of all-purpose, and I'm going to use a 1/2 cup of whole grain white wheat. The next time I make it, I'm going to make it 50-50. Then maybe the next time I make it, I'm going to make it with 1/2 cup. Make it a gradual step. And pretty soon your family's not going to realize what you've done. And by the time you've gone 100%, they're already used to the taste. But that is my challenge for you, is eliminate one of your white products. Hopefully you'll get to the point that you eliminate both, but my challenge this week is with one. Look at your flours, look at your different, even if you change out your sugar and you just go look at the different kinds of flour, and you start sampling them. A lot of them come in the little bags. You can buy almond flour and coconut flour in like 24-ounce containers. If, as I say, yes, if you have been down this road for a while, then I'm going to challenge you to step up your game. Try one of the non-wheat flours, or soak it, sprout it, sourdough.
We hope you've enjoyed today's class. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to be sure to see future episodes. Thank you again and have a great day.